The thing that first got me interested in spirituality the most is when I was following conspiracy theories, and I found out very quickly that some of them, matter of fact, probably a lot of them, talked about how they interfere with our spiritual growth. Hello, Enlightenment seekers. This is Finding Enlightenment with Jay, and as you may have guessed, I'm Jay. A quick disclaimer, please confirm factual details with trusted authoritative sources before drawing firm conclusions. I want to welcome you into a conversation that matters more than headlines and sound bites. What I'm about to share comes from a place of conviction and urgency. There's a sense that something profound is stirring beneath the surface of our public life, a great awakening in which the ordinary people begin to see the structures that have long shaped our world. This is not idle speculation. It is an interpretation born of watching patterns repeat, of noticing how power, media, and culture often work in concert to distract, pacify, and consolidate influence. In this video, I'll trace those patterns and explain why they matter for our freedom and dignity, and offer a way of thinking that restores agency to citizens that refuse to be passive. As you listen, I ask you to set aside easy dismissal and engage with the evidence and logic on their own terms. The language I use, light and darkness, awakening, the third eye, speaks to both political realities and deeper spiritual dynamics. Modern life has eroded rhythms of sleep, attention, and reflection. It has made us more vulnerable to manipulation. At the same time, there are clear signs that people are beginning to reclaim clarity. Whistleblowers, independent investigators, and communities committed to truth are pushing back. This video is a map for anyone that wants to understand that movement, to recognize the tactics that keep us asleep, and to join the work of waking up. I will not pretend that every claim is proven beyond doubt, nor will I shy away from bold interpretations where evidence points. My aim is to open your eyes, not to close minds. If you find resonance in what I say, use it as a starting point for your own research and for conversations with others. If you find disagreement, let that disagreement sharpen your inquiry instead of shutting it down. The Great Awakening I described depends on people that are willing to verify, to question, and to act with moral clarity. I'm not doing this video as a detached observer, but as someone who has watched this world with growing unease, and then through a slow and sometimes painful process, come to see patterns that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. What I describe here is not a fanciful story or a provocation for attention. It is an account of conviction, the narrative that stitches together political, cultural, and spiritual threads into a single tapestry. I call that tapestry the Great Awakening because the phrase captures the moral urgency and the transformative promise that I perceive. A moment when the ordinary people stop accepting the surface explanations offered by institutions and media, when they begin to perceive the deeper structures that have shaped our lives for generations. This awakening is not merely intellectual, but existential. It is a reorientation of how we understand power, truth, and the human spirit. From the first time that I encountered the idea of a hidden network of powerful actors manipulates global events, I felt a chill of recognition. The world often feels chaotic and arbitrary, but the more I looked, the more I saw recurring patterns of behavior among those who hold wealth and influence. These patterns are not random. They reveal a coherent strategy, the consolidation of financial control, the shaping of public opinion through media and narratives, and the cultivation of cultural norms that distract, pacify, or disempower. When one begins to connect the dots, the notion of a dark cabal no longer seems like a paranoid fantasy, but a plausible explanation on why so many institutions repeatedly act against the public interest. The cabal I describe is not a cartoonish secret society with a single headquarters. It is a diffused network of elites, such as political operatives, corporate magnates, entertainment figures, and financial gatekeepers, whose interests align in ways that preserve their and marginalize dissenting voices. The Great Awakening that I envision is the moment when the majority of people recognize this alignment and refuse to accept the narratives that have been fed to them. It is a tipping point in public consciousness, a mass realization that the official stories about crisis, elections, and cultural shifts are often crafted to serve agendas rather than to illuminate truth. This awakening is not merely about exposing corruption. It is about reclaiming agency. When people wake up, they stop being massive consumers of information and become active investigators of reality. They begin to ask uncomfortable questions about who benefits from certain policies, why certain voices are amplified and why others are silenced, and how fear and distraction are used to keep the populace compliant. Central to this awakening is a spiritual dimension that many dismiss at their peril. The language of light and darkness is not merely metaphorical. It describes a real struggle over human consciousness. I have come to believe that the forces aligned against human prosperity do not rely solely on economical leverage or political influence. They also exploit the energetic and psychological vulnerabilities of individuals and communities. Fear, outrage, and manufactured scarcity are powerful tools because they drain human vitality and narrow perception. When people are exhausted, anxious, or addicted to sensationalism, they are less likely to think critically, to form deep relationships, or to cultivate the inner resources necessary for sustained resistance. The Great Awakening, therefore, is just as much about restoring human energy and clarity as it is about exposing corruption. This is where the discourse about the pineal gland and the third eye become relevant. Modern life has introduced a host of environmental and lifestyle factors that blunt our natural rhythms and diminish our capacity for deeper perception. The pineal gland has become a symbol for the broader idea that our biological systems can be compromised by external forces. Calcification of the pineal gland, the disruption of circadian rhythms by artificial light, chronic stress, and poor nutrition are not trivial matters. They erode the clarity of mind and the quality of sleep that are prerequisites for sustained insight. When people are chronically sleep-deprived and stressed, their ability to discern subtle patterns and resist manipulative narratives is weakened. The suggestion that environmental toxins, including excessive fluoride exposure, might contribute to physiological changes in the pineal gland is controversial in mainstream circles. But the broader point remains, our bodies and our environments shape our consciousness, and any systematic effort to dull public perception will exploit those vulnerabilities. Beyond the biological, the Great Awakening also requires a metaphysical reorientation. Many of us have been taught to accept a materialist worldview that reduces human beings to economic units or data points. This reductionism makes it easier for power structures to treat people as resources to be managed, rather than as souls to be respected. Awakening, in my view, involves reclaiming a sense of spiritual dignity. It means recognizing that human beings possess an inner life that is not fully captured by metrics, markets, or media narratives. When people reconnect with that inner life through contemplative practices, community rituals, or simply by reclaiming time for reflection, they become less susceptible to manipulation and more capable of collective moral action. The narrative of a hidden cabal is often met with ridicule, and yet ridicule is a convenient tool for those that wish to maintain the status quo. Labeling dissenters as conspiracy theorists or paranoid serves to delegitimize genuine inquiry. I have watched how inconvenient questions are dismissed by making the inquirer look less credible rather than addressing the question with transparent evidence. This pattern only deepens suspicion. If institutions were truly committed to public trust, they would welcome scrutiny and provide clear, verifiable information. Instead, secrecy and obfuscation breed the very distrust they claim to combat. The Great Awakening is therefore a demand for accountability, a call for institutions to open their books, to disclose conflicts of interest, and to allow independent verifications of their claims. The cultural dimension of the awakening cannot be overstated. Popular culture, entertainment, and celebrity influence are not neutral. They shape values and normalize behaviors. When celebrities and media figures consistently promote narratives that align with elite interests, they function as cultural gatekeepers. The Great Awakening involves reclaiming culture from these gatekeepers and creating spaces where authentic voices can flourish. This is not a call for censorship of art or expression, but for diversification of cultural influence, so that communities can see themselves reflected in media that honors their dignity and aspirations. Some of the more dramatic elements of contemporary conspiratorial thought, such as the reptilian theory, may seem fantastical at first glance. Yet even these narratives perform an important symbolic function. The idea of shape-shifting non-human rulers captures a deep intuition that some of the most destructive forces in society operate without empathy, without regard for human life, and with a cold, predatory logic. Whether one interprets such imagery literally or metaphorically, it points to a moral truth about the dehumanizing tendencies of concentrated power. The reptilian motif externalizes the sense that certain elites behave in ways that are alien to human prosperity. It is a mythic language for a real moral diagnosis. The Great Awakening also reframes how we interpret world events. Rather than seeing crises as isolated incidents, I have come to view them as interconnected episodes in a larger struggle. Economic collapses, engineered conflicts, and manufactured moral panics can be read as tactics that maintain the status quo by distracting the public, consolidating power, and normalizing emergency governance. This is not to suggest that every crisis is staged, but rather that crises are exploited. The pattern is clear, fear is amplified, dissent is surpassed, and policy changes that would have been unacceptable in calmer times are enacted under the cover of urgency. Awakening requires resisting the cycle by demanding proportionality, transparency, and democratic oversight, even in moments of crisis. The social consequences of awakening are profound. When people begin to see through manipulative narratives, they do not simply become cynical, they become active participants in rebuilding civic life. They form communities of inquiry, support local economies, and create alternative media ecosystems that prioritize truth over sensationalism. This grassroots revitalization is the heart of the Great Awakening. It is not a top-down revolution, but a bottom-up renewal of civic virtue and mutual responsibility. The awakened citizen is someone who takes seriously the obligation of citizenship, to verify claims, to hold leaders accountable, and to cultivate the moral and spiritual resources necessary for sustained engagement. Of course, the path of awakening is fraught with challenges. The forces that benefit from public ignorance are adept at co-opting language, manufacturing distractions, and deploying psychological operations that exploit fear and division. They will label truth seekers as extremists, conflate legitimate inquiry with violence, and use the machinery of law and media to marginalize dissent. This is why the awakening must be strategic as well as spiritual. It requires building resilient institutions that can withstand smear campaigns, creating robust channels for independent verification, and developing a culture of disciplined skepticism that resists both gullibility and cynicism. Education plays a central role in this transformation. Awakening is not merely about exposing corruption. It is about cultivating the intellectual habits that allow people to think clearly and compassionately. Media literacy, critical thinking, and a curriculum that honors moral reasoning are essential. But education must be holistic. It must teach people how to care for their bodies and mind, how to manage stress, and how to cultivate practices that enhance clarity and empathy. The biological and the spiritual are intertwined. Neglecting one undermines the other. I do not claim to have all the answers. The Great Awakening is not a blueprint for a utopia, but a call to collective responsibility. It asks us to be vigilant, to be compassionate, and to be courageous. It asks us to reclaim our institutions and our inner lives from forces that would reduce human beings to commodities. It asks us to build communities that honor truth and dignity. The stakes are high because the future of democratic life and human prosperity depends on whether enough people are willing to wake up and act. In the end, the Great Awakening is an act of hope. It is the conviction that ordinary people, when informed and united, can dismantle systems of exploitation and create a world that honors the full dignity of human life. It is the belief that truth, once recognized, has the power to heal and to liberate. I made this video because I have seen the first stirrings of that awakening in the conversations of neighbors, in the courage of whistleblowers, and in the quiet resilience of communities that refuse to be defined by fear. If more of us choose to wake up, to question, to verify, and to act, then the promise of a new era of justice and human prosperity are within reach. If this video has done its work, you will leave with more than a list of grievances. You will leave with a sense of responsibility and possibility. The Great Awakening is not a single event to be awaited, but a process that we enact together when we refuse to accept convenient narratives, when we demand transparency from institutions, and when we rebuild culture and community around truth and human dignity. Reclaiming our attention, protecting our sleep and health, and cultivating practices that sharpen perception are as much a part of this work as exposing corruption and holding power to account. Take what resonates here and turn it into action. Read widely, verify claims with reliable sources, support independent journalism, and invest in relationships and local institutions that sustain civic life. Resist the temptation to retreat into cynicism or to answer one form of domination with another. The awakening I believe in is restorative, not vengeful. It seeks to heal systems and restore the full dignity of human beings. If enough of us choose to wake up and act with courage and compassion, the promise of a more just and prosperous society moves from possibility to reality. Thank you for listening, and if you're ready to go deeper, join the conversation in the comments. Share what you learned, and help build the communities that will carry this awakening forward. Namaste, and let's keep finding enlightenment together.